Yuka Royer is here in studio. Yuka, you're starting tonight with the US Federal Reserve. It has kept interest rates unchanged, citing risks of inflation spiking once again.
That's right, Sharon. The US Central Bank has decided to keep its headline rate at the current range of 4.25% to 4.5%, the level it's kept since December, but penciled in 2 rate cuts to come later this year. The Fed also released its latest quarterly forecast for the US economy. It now expects weaker growth, higher inflation and slightly higher unemployment by the end of this year than it had previously forecast in March. Chairman Jerome Powell noted that uncertainty about the economic outlook had diminished but remained elevated amid Donald Trump's trade policies. The latest decision surprised no one. Even President Trump earlier said that he did not expect a rate cut, while voicing his frustration again at not seeing debt servicing fees come down and insulting Powell. Let's take a listen.
Europe had 10 cuts and we had none. We have no inflation. We have only success. And I'd like to see interest rates get down. Now, Biden did a lot of very short-term debt. So we have short-term debt coming due. And because of this guy's rates, it's hundreds of billions, it's even trillions of dollars.
Trading on Wall Street got a bit choppy after the Fed's announcement. The Dow Jones and the S&P 500 finished the day slightly below the flat line, while the Nasdaq remained in the green with a small gain.
Meanwhile, one of the most politically charged corporate takeovers in recent history is now complete, Yuka.
And that's between Nippon Steel and US Steel. They have now finalised their deal. The $14.9 billion acquisition was first agreed in December 2023, but faced opposition both from the US Steelworkers Union and political leaders, with Joe Biden blocking the deal just before he left office. But the Japanese firm got Donald Trump's approval after agreeing to give him and the future US presidents a golden share. This means that Washington will have veto power over decisions such as taking the company abroad, changing its name or moving its headquarters from Pittsburgh, as well as plant closures, labor and sourcing. A majority of US Steel's board and key management positions will be taken up by American citizens. Nippon will also invest $11 billion in US Steel by 2028.
Next, Russia is trying to show off its economic prowess and attract foreign investment at the same time as the annual St. Petersburg International Economic Forum kicked off this Wednesday.
Business and government leaders from 140 countries and territories are taking part in the 4-day event, according to the organisers. Western visitors, though, are mostly staying away against the backdrop of the war in Ukraine and sanctions against Russia. Moscow insists it can handle whatever the West throws at it, but just how is the country's economy really doing? Luke Schrager takes a look.
A window onto Russia, and one which many in the West have shunned this year, even as Moscow puts on a brave face at the annual St. Petersburg International Economic Forum.
And I think the fact that President Putin congratulated President Trump with his birthday attests to kind of a strong relationship that our leaders have. And we are confident that economic cooperation will continue and we'll see big significant joint projects this year between US and Russia.
Certainly Donald Trump has been coy about whether or not Washington would either pursue or lift sanctions against Russia. Far less reticent, though, has been the European Union, which imposed 18 rounds of sanctions on Russia going all the way back to 2014 and Moscow's annexation of Crimea. After its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Russia managed to stay afloat, shifting its entire economy to a war footing and relying on sales of oil and gas, with Vladimir Putin himself putting military spending at 9% of GDP.
Last year, Russia spent more on defense than the European Union combined. This is a long-term plan for a long-term aggression. You don't spend that much on military if you do not plan to use it.
Some of those sanctions, though, have been biting, along with inflation running around 10%. What's more, with Russian oil already embargoed, the EU's now unveiled a legal framework to wean the bloc entirely off Russian gas by the end of 2027, sidestepping the need for unanimous approval.
Finally, Yuka, you wouldn't necessarily think of Honda as an aerospace company, but it's just pulled off a surprise test launch of a reusable rocket.
A rocket, indeed. Japan's second largest car maker says its research and development unit has successfully flown an experimental rocket. It's tiny, only 6 meters long and 85 centimeters in diameter, weighing less than a ton. For comparison, Starship, the largest reusable rocket that SpaceX is developing, is 123 meters long. But this one is just a prototype. Honda says it has achieved its goal as it rose 300 meters into the air and landed within 37 centimeters of the target touchdown point. The company hopes to eventually send rockets into space for commercial use. Sharon.
Thanks so much for that. That is Yuka Royer with all the day's business news.